Okay, well, welcome back to another episode of PTS chats or PTSD chats. I did have a few people comment back. Why are you leaving the D off for disorder? It is technically, scientifically, they call it a disorder. So whether you call it PTS or PTSD, the point is that we are talking about it. We are not going to be silent about this, and we want to share our experiences that we've gained. So I have Janet Wiszowaty. Am I getting better at the last name? Janet Wiszowaty with
Perfect.
me again. She is from the law enforcement side, and I'm from the military side, both spouses. She also did serve in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So she is in Canada part of her time, but she also travels a lot around the world, kind of like me, another connection we have. So the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, don't know if anybody knows much about that, but they have a very similar lifestyle to the military of moving around, hardship posts, and dealing with similar challenges. And that's how we connected on LinkedIn. And we're going to continue to have these chats, and hopefully we can send a message to others and be of value and of service to military spouse community, law enforcement spouse community, just women out there that are living with this. So welcome back. And last episode, we went into kind of our initial introductions of how we got connected to our military and law enforcement spouses too, and where that went. So you'll have to go back to episode 1 to get the beginning of the story. And today we'll just pick up where we left off. So we're young wives now. We had stories of running around with children in airplanes and airports, and the struggles with having our children in the having issues with our children and raising children in the military and in the law enforcement lifestyle, and just almost comical now. Like I think Janet mentioned last time too, we can laugh about it now. We can kind of, my website even has a note, tears to laughter. We can laugh about it now. But during the time when we were in the moment, and some of these ladies maybe that might be listening to us could be 20 years younger, right, in that moment, and not laughing about it. It's a very serious thing, and they're struggling and they have challenges. So where shall we continue our conversation today, Janet? What was on your
Well, I
mind?
think that where we left off was just transfers, like the challenge of moving and stuff, and moving across country, or in some cases with the military, moving overseas. And the Royal Canadian Mounted Police don't have, they do have, they don't have detachments overseas, but they do have positions overseas. So some of our officers have served overseas, and some have hers, like a friend of ours, he served in Bosnia uh, uh, regarding peacekeeping, and I know other officers that have. But in going back to that, with husbands being away and stuff, childcare. I don't know about you, but that was one of my biggest challenges, getting childcare. A lot of people live close to their families and can have assistance and stuff, where we never lived close to family. And so it was always trying to find that someone to look after your kids. And I don't know about any of you out there, but there were nights I cried myself to sleep feeling guilty because I sent my kids to a babysitter, and my kids didn't like the babysitter, and at one point actually quit my job and babysat my boss's kids because I just was too stressed, and couldn't handle not having somebody that I felt was good for my kids. And not that I'm the perfect mom, I'm far from that, but it's just that moving and making new friends and stuff, you still have to be there for your kids. And I'm not saying anybody needs to do that. That was my choice, because and nowadays, now they have nannies, double, two people working. I didn't really have a career at that point, at the beginning of our service. I just would work. I worked in a bank, I worked at a pool, I just had what I would call, service kind of jobs that were like anybody who worked in the bank. Lots of, and I don't know about military, but lots of RCMP. They were married to someone who worked in a bank, or a nurse, because they could get jobs just about anywhere. Like I had a job in Masset on Haida, which is used to be called Queen Charlotte Islands. There was an armed forces base there. We lived on the base because we didn't have our own housing, and they just had lots of jobs like that. And I had a job at the bank before I even wanted a job at the bank because the manager knew I'd worked in a bank before. So, you know, that was the kind of thing. So I'm not sure how you worked out, but because I know you had two little ones too, and that's a big challenge for lots of the moms out there.
Yeah, I agree. We moved around at least 8 or 9 times in our military move, and it was tough because I felt like I never was grounded and had that family in one spot where I could, hey, let me call grandma and just even run to the store, or like forget getting like nails done or a hair appointment. Like that's that stuff was out. That was so on the back burner. And so, yeah, our children became our world, our life, and it was all about just kind of maintaining the peace, maintaining the family structure, and trying to talk to a kid too that's wondering why is dad gone and for how long and when is dad coming back? And we had all kinds of, luckily we had some structures with the Marine Corps bases with they call it family readiness officers. They kind of supported the military spouses and the kids that were left behind. I became over time a key volunteer, so I became in a leadership role as I got older because I walked the path and I wanted to be there for the younger moms. But they would have activities. I remember one activity we took these cardboard, or was it construction paper, different colored construction papers, cut them up into little long strips. And I cut probably 100 or 200 of them. It was however many days that dad was going to be gone. And you cut them and we made links. So rolled them around, stapled on one side, connected one to
Yeah.
the other. The kids could kind of do this activity with me when they were a little older. And literally, like you would go into homes and you would know dads were gone because the links were hanging. And we would hang them. Oh, it's going to bring tears again. We'd hang them all around the kitchen, hang them around the house, all in one long thread. And every day we got to take one of those links off. And that was our day, every day closer to dad being home. So, little activities like that. Doesn't mean much, but powerful for me. That's an activity the kids can do and visually see every day dad moving closer to getting back to home again. So that's just
I
one story that
love
just
that
popped in my head.
idea.
I know there's so many, like, yeah, we should
Oh, what a neat idea. It's like the calendar, the
advent calendar for Christmas.
advent
Yes.
calendar, you know, how many days to Christmas. What a fabulous idea. I think that's super because then the kids are part of the process. They don't feel like they're left out, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there were things like that we did. We had a lot of mother and kid activities, monthly gatherings, all the holidays, usually around Christmas time, Easter, like mothers and children together. Sometimes we'd be invited to other homes, to have family meal with a
Mhm.
full family unit with a dad. But you know what? Most of us didn't want to do that. It was too painful to go sit in a home where mom and dad were there, all the kids were there, and then your kids again are looking at you like, where's my dad? So you
Yeah.
kind of do self-isolate into a group of other women with kids and just you become each other's support system. And it's women and children wherever we go.
Mhm.
And that was a comfort zone
Yeah.
for me, I guess, other than church. If we'd go to church on Sundays, we'd see
Mhm.
full families
Yeah.
there.
Well, for us, I'm just going back to that time period when our kids were like 4 and 5, and we we lived in an isolated posting. Like there was only fly in. We could only get to the island flying in. And I got to tell you something really funny. And this is to do with military guys. What the military, and this is a Canadian military, except I've got to clarify this. This base that we were on was a communication space. So we had Americans there as well. And we had Navy, and they at a big do at a ball or something, they'd all stand up and sing their own songs. But our husbands, sometimes we had to look after the whole island. So there's sometimes I can remember the first Christmas we were there. There was an incident where Les had to fly into a logging camp to arrest somebody who'd gone crazy, but he'd spent the whole night before on radio communications just to make sure everybody was safe. So, you know, although he was in the community, he wasn't able to be home with us. He was work mode. in work mode. And I'm sure many military, because it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's a 24-hour job. So our guys work different times. But like you were saying about your activities, we had I have to say it was probably our best New Year's ever. And it was on the Queen Charlotte's, and it rarely snowed there because it's off the coast of Alaska. Like we could see Alaska on a clear day from the beach, but it was warmed by the Japanese current. But we did get snow, and we had a potluck for Christmas or for New Year's Eve. We went to one of the members' houses. They had, I can still remember the area sort of had an upstairs area, but they could look down. So the kids were all playing up there, and just everybody was together, all the families. Now the guys were on call, so if anything came up, they had to go. But our kids were really young, and we're driving home that night. And it's not very far. And my husband, we got a big Gran Torino station wagon, and he pulls up. And just to clarify, you guys, my kids are 48 and 49 now. So you got to go back. It was 1977, I think. And so he says, I'm going to back in. And I says, well, it's snowing, And he says, well, if you know how to drive, I said, you don't have snow tires on. He says, well, if you know how to drive, you don't need snow tires. So he got stuck. And our daughter was about 3 or 4, and she says, Daddy's stuck, ha ha, Daddy's stuck, all the way into the house. And then because we were in a cul-de-sac in the military, in PMQs, somebody else in a Jeep pulled up and it right on our front lawn with the lights into our living room, and everybody just ended up at our place. They can, to heck with pulling them out or anything. They're just coming over for a drink. I don't know whether you guys had moose milk. Have you ever heard of moose milk?
Never heard of that.
Oh, we used to we were introduced to it on the base. A gallon of ice cream, a gallon of milk, and a 24 of rum, and then some Kahlua.
That
It
sounds tasty.
It goes down really smooth. So anyways, that's my story about,
it's just amazing how
with them.
You mentioned stories, and then it just triggers such a similar memory for me, because we ended up stuck too, but we were in United Arab Emirates in a post over there, and we decided to go just, spinning the wheels in the desert, which, okay, with the 2 kids and like one in a car seat, like this is going to be a fun little adventure. And yeah, the fun ended real quick when the tires start spinning. I mean, I'm just like, I'm reliving this, but you were like in a snowy situation. I'm in the desert of the Middle East, and I'm just like, now what, and now that has to go off and go walking off into the nearest village of,
yeah, because for us, no cell phones. Before computers and cell phones for us anyways.
Right. And I think, we might have had cell phone, but still reception issues. So I watched my husband walking off into the desert. I'm like, okay, is this a movie now or what? And the children are like, where's Daddy going? We were taking a Frisbee. We found a Frisbee in the back of the car, and we're trying to dig out of the sand with a Frisbee. Like, what are we thinking? And off he comes back with all these wonderful guys from United Arab Emirates, the Emiratis, beautiful, lovely people. And they come in a truck, fishtailing through with him, and they got the tow ball hitches, and they just talking in their language in Arabic, and hooked us up and pulled us out. And, who knows, the story could have ended completely different that day, but thank God people came to the rescue. But yeah, getting stuck in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's part of the adventure, right? Like you cry during the moment, but it turns into an experience and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, we always say. So it's part of the adventure.
And you know what? I have absolutely no regret. There were, at the time, like you said before, at the time things were happening. Oh my God. But how many people can say that a Herc flew up from Vancouver Island with a load of Big Macs to drop on the football field so that we could have Big Macs? And I had the first microwave there. I got the first microwave, and so we could heat them up. But we put in our orders for Big Macs, and the military, somebody in their wisdom, flew up a Herc and had a Big Mac drop for us.
And I mean, I can't speak for all the military units, but when my husband was deployed with one unit, I remember we were in Texas and this church was just so military friendly. And they were like, what can we do? We want to help. And they just went above and beyond. They started making announcements. Hey, we're doing a little collection for the holidays for this battalion, for this group overseas. And they were in Iraq or Afghanistan. I can't even remember. And all of a sudden, I saw moving parts. I was thinking maybe a handful of people from church would come. And New Hope Church in Pearland, Texas. Now I think they're in Manville. They've expanded. And it was incredible camaraderie how they all came together. They came with teams and they started to set up all along the hallway of the church too. And there was a group getting boxes from local supply stores to make sure we had stuff to box up. Because I'm thinking, how are we going to mail stuff and who's going to pay and
Yeah.
what's it's going to cost? And they just made it happen. People were donating boxes for us. Then they had all the little those little packing slips that you have to write down the contents of what you're packing,
Hmm.
and it was just a very simple, for our U.S. troops overseas, very simple, very generic. Then people were bringing bags of donations, and we had toiletries, um, toothbrushes. I think it turned into pillows, televisions. I got a company that actually donated a satellite phone, and then I did donation
Wow.
collections for a little card so that every military member could get this little satellite phone card and call home for maybe 3 or 4 minutes to say hi to the wife, to the
Yeah,
family.
because there were no Zoom calls in
No,
those
there were
days, right?
no
Satellite
Zoom
phones,
calls.
and they were huge, right? They were
Yeah,
they were big.
yeah.
Because I know my husband, when he got called out, he'd have a radio, because the office or the dispatch center was across on the mainland, right? But they had these satellite phones, and they were so big that they carried.
I know. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, how's this all going to work? They made it work. This unit actually sent my husband's unit, or the church sent my husband's unit scopes. They didn't even, they were missing like critical, war type saving material, and they didn't have any scopes. This company chipped in and got so many 200, whatever we needed was in batches of like 200, and got the scopes to them. Then it turned into like pillowcases, I think some televisions. I mean, it was crazy by the end. They started to pull up not horse carts, horse trailers to transport the stuff because they realized they tried the U-Haul trucks and those little trucks. It wasn't enough. It was too heavy. So then horse trailers started showing up and they're loading the horse trailers. And so everybody's sitting there doing like assembly line, getting all this stuff done to the end. And I'm watching the boxes go in a horse trailer off to the post office. And I'm like, this really did happen. This is amazing. And so you're talking
Mhm.
about the helicopter drop. They were in such a remote area. They were not living large. And these helicopters, they said we can't even get the supplies by land. There's just too many IED
Yeah.
explosions, bombing. So they flew the stuff over their unit. And then there they were. They were just all sitting there going, oh my gosh, look what's flying down from the sky. And that was a wonderful holiday I think they had right there. But yeah.
Do you know that reminds me of, there's a Christmas movie, and Operation Christmas, I think it's called, and it's a Christmas movie, right? So it's a cute movie, but it's about a military guy, and they make Christmas for this island, and it's really cute. I'll have to look it up and pass it on to you. But
Pass that on.
we had we had TV, but was run by the mainland. And if you'd be in the middle of a movie, like we'd be watching a late night movie or something, but the person that was running it, if they got tired, they shut it off. And then all of a sudden, and those were the days where you had the symbol when you knew that TV was shut down for the night. There was no such thing as 24-hour TV. So, but
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the stories
it's
just
the
go on.
memories, and just to tell these young moms, or even some closer to retirement, enjoy it. And as hard as it may be, you're going to laugh about it sometime, because these are memories that very few people have.
Hmm. Yeah, they say for the military, it's like what, 1% of the population, at least in the US. So I assume very
Mhm.
similar, percentages in Canada and other places. It's like a 1% thing. So not everybody gets to experience that lifestyle. And
Mhm.
it's a special thing if you can hang on and get to the other side. So I know you've even spoken at like the UN, the United Nations on topics, and me as a life coach for military spouses too, and high performers, overachievers. It's really just about being there to help them along their path and meet them wherever they're at, and be that cheerleader, that encourager in the corner, because sometimes you
Yeah.
don't have that on the other side. I was lucky to have a mom who was starting the path of retirement when my kids were younger, and it became a pattern. When dad would leave, she would come and help me for a few months. I do have to give a shout out to my mom. She was so helpful, and she'll have a whole different perspective if I do Zoom calls with her on how it was, because she's like, yeah, you were kind of out of it. I said, I thought I had it all together, mom. It was great. We
Yeah.
were there and we were, and she's like, no, I remember when the kids were running around naked or in diapers climbing the cupboards for Cheerios, and you were just trying to write a letter to your husband or something, just sitting there in the corner, just frozen. And I'm like, I don't remember that. So she has a different perspective of
Well, I'll
what
tell
that's
you,
like.
when we got transferred to Masset, and we had to live in, it was all I can say, it was like a shack. It was 2 bedroom, kitchen and living room were one room, and you had to move the Chesterfield on the kitchen table to open the oven. And then, so we had bunk beds for the kids, but my husband got called back to court. He had to go to Queen's Bench Court, so he was gone for about a week. And we had just moved there, and I had a tooth problem, so I'd had a tooth pulled. I had a sinus infection. I had a dry socket. I didn't know at the time. I was so sick, didn't know anybody. And the kids flushed something down the toilet. And I think I mentioned it in our last call with the owner not wanting to come in the house because my husband wasn't home, the landlord, to fix it. And I can remember closing the door. And some of you out there may have this. And you know what? You're not a bad mom for it. My kids turned out okay. And they laying on the bed crying, myself, and bedroom door closed, both my kids sitting outside the bedroom door crying. That's all I could do. That was just my only coping skill at that moment. And that happens. We're human, and that happens. And so, but I can talk about it now, and I hopefully didn't damage them too badly, but they're okay
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, it seemed like things would always break down as soon as the guys would leave. I mean, they tried so hard to set up the house and make sure everything's in working order, fix anything with the cars, do the oil changes, everything. And then dad would take off, and I think the first thing that would go out would be like the remote garage door. And here I am like, it's not working. I can't get my car out. And then, yeah, it would go from one thing to the next, and the list just piled on. But you get through it one step at a time, and it's annoying, it's frustrating at first. It drains you completely as you're trying to be positive. Always that positive force, positive energy for the children. Um, but yeah, there are days I think our kids saw us crying. I ended up in Hurricane Katrina with 2 kids while my husband was away at training. And my daughter has a little journal she came across. And I said, what are these pictures? And she says, Mom, that was you in the driver's seat. And I said, what are those big, shooting lines coming out? Mom, you were crying. You were crying the whole time we were in the evacuation line because we were barely moving, and it took like 20 hours to go hardly any distance, losing gas. It was a hot day in Texas. The summer heat, it was like a war zone on the side of the road. We saw horses and dogs, carcasses, like they was so hot they were actually overheating in the horse trailers and the dogs. So I saw horses, dogs, and diapers. That's what you saw thrown out on the roads as you're like barely moving. But my daughter has this journal, and yeah, that was you, Mom. You were crying, and I just remember tears coming out of your eyes, and you just were driving and crying behind the wheel. And yeah, it happens. It's okay. Tears are emotions, and we need to release them somehow. Because I want to be happy and joyful most of my life. So I'll let those tears out and keep moving on.
Yeah. Yeah, and your support system. And in those days, like I say, we didn't have cell phones. It cost a lot of money to make a phone call. And like we were like 3 provinces away from my parents. And my mom was a young grandma, so there's only 20 years between mom and I, and 20 years between my son and I. And so she was 40 when I had my son, and she still was working. So she couldn't just drop everything and come and help me and stuff. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
those were the days.
The only other thing I want to add for this conversation, you mentioned moving around with different jobs too. So me as well as a young mom, I couldn't think of leaving the house, and I'm very blessed that I had the luxury to stay home. And my husband said, you're welcome to stay home and raise the children. Like, you don't have to go out and work. We'll make the bills, work.
Mhm.
So it's nice to have that option. As you get older, maybe I got more passionate and more things I wanted to, get out of the house and explore more as the kids got older. But and some ladies, they do it different. They have those jobs like dental hygienists. They have these jobs, they call them my webmaster, he's great. He has great wording for things. Portable jobs. So I never
Yes,
thought of
yeah.
that. So I would give that as a tip to young, military law enforcement mom getting into it, knowing that you're going to be moving around a lot and you're on the fence of which way to go. You could think about a portable job. Start up your own business is very challenging, but if you want to work and get trained for a field that moves with you, where you know that everybody has a dentist everywhere you go, there's just certain jobs. I did admin, so wherever I went, I ended up with the admin job
Mhm,
because someone always needed like front office or somebody to run, the front office or the
mhm.
back end of something. So yeah, portable jobs are a huge asset if you can figure out what you want to do and know that when your spouse is moving, you can just transfer and you have your resume built on that same pattern. It also pigeonholes you too. I mean, I was so sucked in admin that I could barely do anything else because my resume just always had me in that front office. So
Well, the
yeah.
other thing nowadays, just look at what we're doing. I'm in Scotland right now. You're in California, and
Right.
we can communicate. But lots of people now, and this is thanks COVID, really, more and more people found they could work from home. So it's not maybe as challenging for some of them and fairly new, right? That you could work from home maybe from your job. Now, for me, that wouldn't work. I was a much better mom for working. I was not that homebody my husband could have been. He was great with the kids at home, not me, not so much. But and you know what? I like going out to work. It gave me a purpose, and we all need a purpose. Whether it's raising your kids and being the best mom you can be, whether it's volunteering like you were doing. I volunteered too. Like it just was what we did, right? I always said if my kids were going to be in a sport or in something, that I couldn't complain about it if I wasn't willing to volunteer and be part of the solution to anything, right? So, but yeah, I wouldn't change my adventures for anything. And as you know, I still can't sit home.
No, we're still moving around and we still want to be part of the solution. So that's a wonderful way to end our segue and to this episode because we want to keep them kind of shorter and concise. People are just fighting for attention in the world. There's so much distraction. We don't want to consume people's time. We just want to give nuggets. So that's why we're trying to keep these episodes a little shorter. So they're bite sized, right?
Yeah.
So with that note, yeah, living purpose. If you're struggling and looking for your living purpose, if women are out there talking to you women out there, maybe younger, maybe like me transitioning in their 40s or 50s and just kind of stuck. Like, what is my next purpose? Like, yeah, reach out to us. We're here to have a conversation with you. We're here to just support you and come alongside you. So for Janet again, just to end, where can people reach you if somebody heard your conversation and said, I need to talk to that woman?
You can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. Probably, but if you're not on LinkedIn, it's just Janet Wiszowaty, and that's WISZ or ZOWATY. I got to remember that you pronounce the Z different than we do.
Yeah, that's a very French side, Z or something. Z,
I don't know,
okay.
maybe it's British side.
British or French or something. So yeah, and
But
for
anyways, we're neighbors, so
yeah, we're global neighbors, so it's okay. And for Vanessa Donaldson, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm the reset coach. I'm helping people recharge their life and just reset your agenda, reset your lifestyle if it's feeling like it's a little off track. And my website is resetwithvanessa.com. So thank you again for those who took some time in their day to listen to us, and please make some comments on the YouTube. We'd love to hear back feedback and connect and engage and interact with our audience because it's not just about the two of us. It's about spreading messages and community and working together. So
and you're
thank
not
you
alone.
all. And nobody's alone. No, you're not in
No.
this alone. Thank you so much for joining me again, Janet, for another chat.
Hey, my pleasure. It's so much fun.